welcome to the Purlsbeforethyme knitting podcast. I'm Elise and this is Silas, who is misbehaving a bit today, shall we say. He doesn't want to stop making lots of noise, so we'll see how we get on without interruptions. So yeah, welcome to the Purlsbeforethyme knitting podcast. I'm Elise and I'm a knitter based in Norway, and if you're new here, welcome. This is a just relaxed space where I talk about knitting and yarn and all that kind of thing. And if you're not new here, welcome back. It's been a little while. I've been super busy with a lot of life. So let's get into today's video, which is going to be about gift ideas for the knitters in your life. So if you are a knitter, stick around and see if you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, I'd really like to hear what you would like as alternatives or your point of view. And if you are not a knitter, then stick around because there's some quite helpful advice for how to get nice gifts for your knitting loved ones. So before I get into the actual suggestions for gifts, I would just like to have a little shout out, which is that if you are going to get something for a knitter, please try as much as you can to support local yarn shops and local makers, because I know that they really appreciate any support they can get. And like knitting is, people who knit often have a very good appreciation for how long it takes to make things of quality, and it's nice to support people who aren't necessarily knitters but are like, ceramicists who make knitting accessories and that kind of thing. So if you are able to, support someone who's smaller business, please, I would encourage you to do that. I know it's often hard to find them if you're not in the space, but, I'm going to give you a little bit of advice about that at the end. So firstly, let's talk about small gifts or like stocking stuffers. So things that are not very expensive necessarily, and I think all knitters are pretty happy to receive on the whole. So the first thing I would say is stitch markers. What they are is the most common type that I really enjoy are these. They're just like little safety pins. They look like a bulb. You often get them on clothes tags. So multicolored things that look like this. They are great because I find they're like, bobby pins. So you buy 100 of them and then 6 months later you can find 2. So these are excellent as a gift. If someone just gives me a bunch of these, I'm very happy. So if you want just simple ones, go with something like this. You can get these kind of all over the place. But if you want to go one level up, there are a lot of sort of smaller independent makers that make really beautiful handcrafted stitch markers, and these are really like a treat. So one of them might cost, $10, $20, I don't know, but it changes depending on what they're made of and how long they take to make. But here are a few of my really cute ones. This one's made in polymer clay. It has a little koi fish on it. I really like it. This is a friend of mine actually in Norway who, I don't know if she makes markers anymore, but she was a big knitter and then she moved into clay work. And then this is from a maker in Denmark called Strikkediem, and she actually hand makes all of these and then solders the rings at the top shut so that they don't catch on your yarn as you're working, which I really appreciate, because sometimes when you have like a little piece of metal that's like a bit open, it can bend and warp and things and catch. So these are very beautiful, very high quality. And sometimes you can get really cute little marker sets. So this is a little acorn that I got made of wood, and inside this little acorn was a little set of also sort of handmade stitch markers that are sort of themed, like this is a little pine cone, and there's some little heart with a leaf. So these things can range in quality and scale and stuff. So but what I'm going to do is I'm going to link some of my favorite makers down below, who I find on Instagram and stuff. But obviously if you know of any makers, please mention them in the comments, and then hopefully we can all support each other in this. So that's stitch markers. Then one thing that I find super useful that I wish I had more than one of is this. This is a plastic ruler, but on it has these stitch gauge diagrams. And what's really nice with this is if you don't know what gauge is, that's fine. But the idea is when you work with different types of yarn and then different needle sizes, you get a certain density of stitches. And instead of having to like put a tape measure or a ruler down and count how many you have in a certain distance, this is transparent and it has the diagrams, and you can just overlay this on your knitting and then match up the diagram to your stitches. So you don't have to do any counting, recounting stuff. You just lay this over and you're like, okay, my gauge is 18, my gauge is 20, and it's really nice. And also having it be transparent for the ruler is also super handy. So this I got at my local yarn shop in Norway. I'm sure there's lots of equivalents all over the place, but yes, recommend things like this. Next thing that I really like having is I have lots of these, because every time you go away and you want to take like some accessories with you with your project, it's handy to have a tape measure. So I have, I think, 3 or 4 of these in all different places, and often when I need one I can't find them, but now I can because I actually have one on my keys. I got that one from a shop called Beautiful Knitters in London, and they sell keychain tape measures. I'm sure other places do as well. And yeah, this one's also very special because it's in Liberty fabric. So yeah, a beautiful tape measure is always nice to have, and yeah, I don't think there's a problem with giving these to people. I love them. Next thing that is useful for knitters is, a lot of these are just like tools and things that are used a lot, is yarn needles. So there's lots of different types of, I don't know if they're called yarn needles in English, maybe they're called like darning needles or something. But yeah, just fat needles with a big loop in the end. They come in plastic, they come in metal, they come in like metal with a plastic loop. So you get all sorts of different sets. It's nice to have a cute little set in a little box. So this is a little beautiful wooden needle box that I'm able to store all of mine in, which is really convenient for keeping them safe. So that's a really sweet little gift. None of these things are terribly pricey, so that's the idea here. The other thing I think is useful, but you can maybe have too many of these, it's small scissors. So I have 3 scissors, but that's because I've done a recent big tidy up and I found them all because they were all lost somewhere and I was in despair, and they were all like in the bottom of various bags and stuff. So yep, cute little small scissors are always nice to have. I always use these when I'm weaving in ends and cutting things. So yeah, these are nice. It's nice to have something a bit special. So you can get beautifully made scissors at local yarn shops. They tend to be very good at sourcing cute little accessories. So those are the small things I was thinking. The other thing that if you're able to get hold of is very nice, if you know a knitter who makes a lot of sweaters, like me, there's a thing called a stitch holder cable, which is just a thin piece of plastic tubing like this. So that when you are making a sweater like this one, for example, where you divide the body and the sleeves, then you need to put the stitches, the live stitches, onto something else just for a while. And what's nice about these pieces of plastic is you can just shove a knitting needle in the end of them and they kind of stick and you can just pull them through. So they're quite easy to work with. I don't know if anyone remembers the craze in the 90s / early 2000s called Scooby-Doos, which were just these things and you could make knots with them, and I was really obsessed with these when I was like 10. I must have made hundreds of these Scooby-Doo keychain things. I made helicopters with them, I made an elephant, I made giraffes and a tiger and all sorts of things with these plastic tubes. So You can't really buy them as Scooby-Doos anymore, but I was lucky enough that I hadn't thrown my pile of Scooby-Doos away when I was a kid, so I didn't have to buy any Stitch holders. I just was like, oh, that's a great use for these piles of plastic tubing I had from when I was a kid. But yeah, you can either buy like a whole spool of this, so you can cut that up, or you can just buy individual strands of 1 meter or 2, and that's also really useful. So those are just useful, nice to have things that I think a lot of knitters would really like. And then, so those are all like this little small things that I think are nice. The other thing that I think is really nice, if you know someone really well, you can ask them if they, or you don't have to know them well, but ask your knitting friend if they have a Ravelry wish list. So Ravelry, if you don't know what it is like the biggest social media platform for knitting and crafting and crochet. And it has a database of millions of patterns by hundreds and thousands of designers, and there's a whole database on yarn and yarn types. It is one of the most useful resources in crafting. And if you're not in the knitting sphere, it might not be something you have heard of or know about. But there is a really nice function in there called a wishlist function, and you can actually make a list of all the patterns that you as a knitter would like to make or purchase. And then if you send that to people who are not on Ravelry, then yeah, they're able to purchase patterns for you as a gift. So if that's something as a knitter that you didn't know about, go ahead and make a Ravelry wish list. And yeah, if you aren't a knitter, ask your knitting friends if they have a Ravelry wish list, because patterns aren't always cheap and the prices are going up. So, you know, you could expect to pay, you know, $6 to $10 for a sweater pattern, and it's not a lot of money, but it's, you know, it adds up when you make a lot of things. So yeah, that is a suggestion I have as well. Okay, so now we move on to the slightly bigger things, right? So the first thing is project bags and needle cases. So if you know someone who lacks project bags or would like to have something special as a project bag, there are a few really wonderful makers that make hand embroidered like linen project bags that I really like. An example that I have been wishing for a long time but I haven't committed to yet, but I really love her work, is on Instagram. Her name is Purlsbeforethyme Makes. She makes hand embroidered project bags, and she also makes hand embroidered project bag kits. So if you know someone who's a little bit more into embroidery as well, that could be a really beautiful gift. Otherwise, I can show you some examples of project bags here. This is a project bag that I own from Petite Knit. It currently doesn't have any projects in it. It has a lot of other bits and bobs. It has my own handmade interchangeable needle case, and then needle cases are also kind of useful if you know someone who doesn't have one. So a really popular brand is Mood, M-U-U-D. They make project bags and needle cases out of leather, and I got this one secondhand and I really like it. So you can see it is perfect. It stores all my interchangeable needles and then cables. So it's quite a pricey thing to buy. So that's a really nice, beautiful gift to give someone. This is a beautiful project bag because what's nice is it has pockets on the inside, so you can put all sorts of little needles and accessories down the sides, which is super handy. So yeah, I'd recommend that. Also at the bottom of this, I've just found like a small gadget thing that is a really nice gift if you don't own one. But this is for not just knitters, this is for anyone who owns knitwear. And this is a depiller. So if you have any kind of knitwear that pills, you can get one of these for not so much money. And you just run it over your knitwear and it will take all the little lumps and bumps off it. And yeah, it's a nice thing to have, sharpen up your look. Yeah, those are useful. Okay, so project bags and needle cases. There are so many around and they range in price and quality. So if you want to go all the way high end and get the beautiful handmade one on commission, that's always very nice. It's a very special thing to have. But also there's a huge range of different types of project bag that are very beautiful as well. So now let's get into like big items that I think a lot of knitters are like, oh, should I get this? Do I need this? So if you live with a knitter, have you spent a lot of time in the evening with your hands like this with yarn on it and then winding into a ball by hand? If the answer to that is yes, you might want to consider investing in a yarn swift and a ball winder. So I didn't think I needed this, and then when I got them, they completely changed my life, and I have no regrets. So it's hard to recommend one of these over the other. I think I would, if you only want to buy one, I would go ball winder, because you can kind of make do without a yarn swift. It is tricky, but yeah, what this does is you clamp it on the edge of a table, and if you have like a big skein of yarn, ignore my cat, then you just wind it up and then you get a nice little cake of yarn, so it's much easier to work with. And then this is what you would hang the yarn on, and then this adjusts to different sizes of yarn skein hanks, and then this just spins naturally as you're balling on the winder. So I've had these for years now and I have no regrets about buying them. This was quite expensive. I think this was twice the price of this, but they're both in great working condition. They have probably wound tens of kilometers of yarn, so definitely go for something like pretty good quality. You don't need like top of the range. I've seen them that are like an integrated swift winder setup where they're a lot more. But yeah, that's a really nice gift for someone. Let's talk about books. So knitting books are really, they tend to be quite expensive books on the whole, like nice, beautiful coffee table style knitting books, I guess. So a lot of the time you'll get like pattern books, so they'll have a lot of patterns in it. So if you know the style that your knitting friend has, if they like Fair Isle, if they like cables, if they like hats or something, getting a really beautiful book for them I think is a beautiful idea. One of my favorite series of knitting books is called A Knitting Life by Marianne Sager, and this is a trilogy of books. The third one is coming out this year. The second one came out last year, and then the first one came out maybe a couple of years before. And these are honestly, like, you don't need to be a knitter to love these books. They are like coffee table style books, and what she does is she's basically documented travels she's done throughout her life and taken inspiration from all around the globe, and then designed knitting patterns inspired by all these different cultures. So I have the second one, and that one has really, really beautiful patterns from, I think, Tanzania, but there's some sub-Saharan African countries that are beautiful, and then she has some from Peru as well that are just stunning. And like the photography is also like, she traveled in the 80s and 90s a lot, so they're like, really nostalgic, beautiful film photographs that have been blown up very nicely. So it's, a really nice story as well as just make this sweater, here's the instructions kind of thing. So books are really nice as a gift. The other thing you can give is a subscription to a knitting magazine. So some really beautiful top quality knitting magazines that come to mind. Number one would be Laine magazine. I say Laine because I read it as French, but I think because it's a Finnish magazine, it's pronounced Laine. So I'm not sure about that. I heard that somewhere. But they have a few issues a year, and they have very beautiful quality photography, and they really make an effort to do size inclusive designs and showcase designers from all kinds of places, and designers that are also like completely new, as well as designers that are more established. So I think they do a really good job, and yeah, that's a great gift, is a year subscription to Len. I think they're also very nice in the sense that you get patterns, but you also get really good quality knitting journalism in them as well. So that's them. Another knitting magazine that I think is super beautiful is Amirisu, which is a Japanese magazine, and I have a few select issues that I really like, and you can often get hold of like older issues quite easily for this, and they have, you know, like a theme every issue, and they ask designers to reflect on the theme and then make a design based on that, or not necessarily, but it's just the ones I have are all like that, and they're all just like really nice, and I really enjoy reading about different people's interpretations of a theme or design, and I think, you know, it's a really, you know, beautiful thing to give someone. I know I've said beautiful way too much, but I don't care. It's, yeah, apt as a word. So yeah, another gift that I think is quite nice is I wouldn't always recommend this, but there's a designer in Scotland called Rebecca, and her knitting name is called Creia Bear, and she has collaborated with a illustrator, and they have come up with some fun knitting t-shirts, which I'll put a picture up of somewhere. And they're really fun and young, and like not necessarily young, but they're just, you know, like fun and a bit retro. And yeah, if you want to have a fun like t-shirt that's, you know, finally like designed with care and thought for a knitter, I think those are really nice. So what's nice about those is as well, they're not just like mass-produced screen printed tees. They are, you know, made in sort of small batches, carefully by, you know, with a really like nice design collaboration. So go support them if you would like that. Okay, so those are my main recommendations for gifts for knitters, because now I'm going to talk about yarn and needles. So I haven't recommended buying yarn for knitters because I think yarn is very personal, and if someone who doesn't know what I like to knit or how I like to knit went into a yarn store and was like, "Ooh, I don't know anything about yarn, but I'm going to get some yarn for Elise because she likes knitting," I'm not sure that that would be something I would like. So I think the chance of missing on that is high. And that's for several reasons. It's because yarn, I at least think yarn is very personal, and I also think a lot of knitters enjoy the process of selecting yarn and buying yarn. So knitters will have their little stash and this is like your little treasure trove that you know where you got everything, and it's like, you know, little memory box in a way. But you know, if someone bought me yarn, I would feel pressured to make something with it, and I make a lot of sweaters, so if you gave me like one little ball of yarn, I'd have to make something pretty small, and then that would make me stressed. I could use it as part of a bigger project as well, but the thing is, I have a tendency to overthink, and then I would get overwhelmed and I wouldn't use it. So I would rather people didn't get me yarn unless they knew me very well or had asked me in advance if I'm planning a project and what yarn I would like to use for that project. That is my very personal opinion. That is not true of everyone, and I know that. But I've had it before where people are like, "Oh, I had some yarn that I found at a yard sale and I thought of you, so I bought it," and it's like a ton of cotton. It's like, okay, cotton is very tough on the hands. I avoid it completely. I I would never use it. And I know they're very well intentioned, but it's just, you know, it makes me sad because I know that they really had a lot of kind intention and thought behind it, but in practice it just kind of ends up being a bit of a burden in a way, and that's not so fun. So yeah, I would prefer that people don't buy me on the whole, but I would recommend that people buy gift cards to local yarn shops. So if someone is, instead of buying me yarn, just went to a local yarn shop and said, can I have a gift card? That would be such a wonderful thing, because that gives me freedom of choice, freedom of, you know, feeling like maybe I can splurge a bit more on something, maybe do something a bit different, and I think that is really nice. So I would definitely go for a gift card over actual physical yarn. And then let's talk about needles. So one very, very nice gift for people is called an interchangeable knitting needle set, which is, for example, this isn't actually a set, this is me buying lots of things, but it's something like this. You get a lot of needles of different sizes, and then you get cables that you can join them together with. Actually, I have a better example here that actually did come as a set, which is these ones. So this set is a very famous set of needles. It is the Chalgu red lace set. So they don't come in this case. I made this case myself based on a design by a company that sold them, and I couldn't afford to buy it, so I made it myself. So yeah, you'll get a set of different size needles of a certain length, and then you'll get some cables to join them together. And these are very high quality needles. They are very, very nice. These are surgical grade stainless steel, and they are honestly like top of the line needles. What's nice about them is you can always expand your set, so you can choose what size you want. So they come in small, medium and large, depending on the average size of the needles. So yeah, I think the kind of standard set that a lot of people would get is like the one that I have, which is, I think it goes from 2.25 millimeter needles up to 5, maybe 6. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. I'm old. So, yeah, these are really nice to get. They are a bit pricey because you get a lot of needles in one, but you don't actually have to buy lots of different lengths of needles ever again. So in that way, they are an investment, but if you are a committed knitter, they're a really good investment. The only thing I would be a bit hesitant about is if you don't know what kind of, like, people can have quite strong preferences for what material they like their needles in. So these are made of metal, they're steel, they're really nice. I like them because they're very sharp, which makes them really good for things like lace knitting. But I also have, like, I used these a lot before, I still use them quite a lot, but I've kind of converted more to wood and bamboo because it's a bit nicer on my hands at the moment, especially in winter. So I have been considering getting a set of C-knit needles, which are these beautiful Japanese bamboo needles. I have a few that are not interchangeable, they're just, yeah, set length, but they also have a really nice like swivel function on the needle, which is pretty cool. So I think that is a really nice gift. I would recommend asking before you invest in something like that as a gift, because I think it's nice to ask, that's all, just to know what preferences are. So yeah, that is my opinion on needles, and yeah, that is kind of it. Those are my recommendations. If the knitters watching have any things that they think I've missed or I have been too opinionated on, please share. I would really like to know what other people's opinions are on gifts and knitting related things. And if you're not a knitter, I hope you found something useful, And please check the comments and the description box for recommendations of makers and things that are nice. But what I would say is, I was going to give you a tip on how to find local makers. So Google or using your preferred search engine, look up local yarn festivals, because what will be listed there is the makers going to that festival. And often on those lists you will find makers who make stitch markers, and as well as yarn producers and such. So if you have an extra 15-20 minutes, I think that's worth doing. You'll probably find makers who are more local to you, and that's always a good thing, I think, to support the people in your community. So as I'm based in Norway, all of my recommendations are going to be very biased towards Norway, Denmark, maybe a bit of Sweden, and that's kind of it. And maybe a few people I find on Instagram by chance, but I am very aware that I live in like a little location-based bubble, and that is, very biased. So please go and do a little bit of work to support your local crafters. So yeah, that is everything I have to say. Thank you for watching, and it's nearly a year since I've had this channel and I've been having a great time on it. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who has watched and followed along for the last year. So anyway, that's all I have to say. So thank you and bye.